If people enjoy that kind of challenge, like, good on them. It doesn't really do anything for me visually. Like, an individual detail doesn't have to be amazing, but all of the detail put together creates a scene in your mind that is sort of like talking about alignment is like having soup for lunch. It can be fine, I guess, but unless it's paired with other stuff, it's gonna be a snooze fest. I'm gonna mix up some terrain wash here. See how much of this recipe I can remember. So we've got brown here. We'll make the black stuff first. So a black wash, or a wash in general, right, is just a watered down paint. In this case, I'm going to be using inks to get a better color. But it's basically something that you paint over terrain so that it'll flow down. You want it to be pretty liquid, so it'll flow down into the nooks and crannies. And I learned about this from Black Magic Craft, and I've been making basically the same recipe as his from, like, I don't know, over 5 years ago. Basically every time I ever make wash, I do the same thing, and it's worked out great for me. It's basically water, some sort of Flow Aid. I use this Liquitex stuff. I think it's the same bottle I've used for years because it doesn't take very much to do the job. That just helps the water itself. It helps the whole mixture sink into the cracks better. This matte medium, just how much of it determines kind of how thick the wash is, and then these inks for color. You could use acrylic paints. These are acrylic inks, which is just going to make a more potent color. Start with water. Yeah, right about there. It's not a super scientific thing. Flow Aid, it does not take very much of. Just a bit. I can probably do more than that. I've got enough to go between the two of them. I don't need to be stingy. Definitely more, well, mostly it's just water at this point. Mix it up with the Flow Aid. I'm not trying to fill it up all the way. Don't need to. This will last quite a while. And then some matte medium. Decent amount of this, maybe like a third of the total. And I believe the more of it that's in, the thicker it's going to get. You just bought some Nolan oil for the first time. That stuff is pretty much magic. Have you had a chance to use it yet? Because you'll definitely notice a difference. It's like, wow, all of a sudden it doesn't matter what you paint. It's going to look a little bit better once you put some of that on it, right? Mix this up. Should kind of become this kind of milky mess. I've obviously been using these bottles for a really long time. They're kind of a mess, but that's okay. Just collected. It actually helps me identify, like, oh yeah, this is the black one. All the mess on it. Okay. And then we just need to put in, this is carbon black acrylic ink. And I'm gonna put a good amount in. Let's see. Helps if the eyedropper is full. I'm gonna do probably, I don't know, four or five eyedroppers to start with. And I'm going to do some quantity of brown as well here. And I'll basically be doing the inverse proportions on the brown. I'll do, 4 or 5, probably more of the brown, and a little touch of the, do a little bit more, touch of the black. All right. You've been using it on your dwarves. They look good. You're happy with table quality, and it's helped me be happy with less than perfect minis. Yeah, table quality is the way to go, I think. Sometimes it's fun to go all out on something and try to make it a little bit better, but a lot of times, like, man, there's so much satisfaction to be had by just having, especially just table quality, but then also kind of sitting back and going, look at all these things now that are painted. It makes such a big difference. There's some name for it. I need to look this up because I want to reference it all the time, but there's like a trick of the eye where the more detail, which color is just providing detail, it tricks the eye into seeing it all as considerably better than it is individually. Like an individual detail doesn't have to be amazing, but all of the detail put together creates a scene in your mind that is sort of like it's almost like a trick. It's almost like a trick. Okay, what can I test? What can I test this on? This is not a good test. Man, I should just have gray minis sitting around here. That's what I always test on. Test it on our warthog friend here. I think he would consider me a friend. I mean, why not? All right, so we're looking for a nice solid black or a darken. Yeah, that's pretty good. Metal, you're using metal paints instead of painting it to look like metal. I don't blame you. I've never messed with like non-metallic metal. If people enjoy that kind of challenge, like, good on them. It doesn't really do anything for me. So, okay. I think that's good. I think that's pretty good. All right. So there's some black wash. Let's make some brown. I'll be using the brown on the muddy and probably the sandstone. So same as before, we'll put in just some water, some amount of water. And then some Flow Aid. It's going to get a little bubbly. And then a medium. Sure. Feels about right. Should kind of make it look like milk. And then I'm going to do, I don't know, 4 or 5 of the brown. And maybe 1 of the black. Maybe half. Yeah, 1 of black should be fine. It's plenty of brown ink. Okay. Obviously, if you use them, be careful with the inks. They are inks. to be, you don't want to spill those anywhere that you care about. And we definitely want it definitively brown. It's good for it to be. I think I can test this on maybe the front and the arms. Okay. Let's see what this looks like. Perfect. It's like magic. All right. Get rid of that mini. These, as much as I'm testing it on that primed mini, just because it's like nearby. Take a little top off here. I wouldn't use these for miniatures though, for the same reason as using the proper acrylics for terrain versus miniature paints. That pigment size is going to have, it's just going to have a harder time having the impact that dedicated miniature washes are going to have. French, so you're not one of those, Sebastian, you're not one of those sickos that thinks like soup is a meal, right? Like soup's a fine thing. And I say that's all the love I can give soup. It's a fine thing. But most certainly it's not a meal. Yeah, I said it's a fine thing. Depends on how much of it you eat. Well, now we're getting technical, but fine. You guys are crazy. If you're walking down the street, bunch of options, bunch of these cool little boutique places, like, hey, let's go to that place for lunch. It's nothing but soup. You would just uncontrollably, you would just have to point to the other side of the street and say, just whatever's there, anything else, just anything but oops all soups. I can't do it. Sorry. Why would I put myself in that position? Every once in a while, no, T, it's oops all soups. Every once in a while you see a soup and it's like, okay, that I'm in the mood, I'll do this. But to deliberately go to a place that's all that all the time, it just seems like a bad decision. Seems like a well, because somebody made a mistake. And not in the way that, like, cereals want you to think that they made a mistake putting all berries or whatever. Like, legitimately, somebody got a whole small business loan, you know, spent time away from their family, establishing a little lunch spot, and then somewhere along the way took the misguided advice that soups are legitimate. Sorry, what were we talking about? Lunch, I think. As long as it's not soup. I mean, you could punish yourself. That's not really going to spite me. Ooh, what's my favorite food? I'm pretty easy, honestly. I don't really have things that are like, ooh, that's my favorite. It's more things that I'm like, yeah, I don't. Like if somebody was like, listen, you have to go to this place. It's called Oops All Soups, and the soup it's unbelievable. I wouldn't even probably try to remember the name of the place that somebody told me. I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Nah. But almost any other food type. Now it comes across like I just hate soups. It's just I'm not going someplace in particular for that. That doesn't sound interesting. If coffee's a soup, then I'm not sure even what we're doing with words anymore. It's not that I hate soup, but soup's not going to be soup. Just there's got to be more than just soup. Soup and a sandwich. Okay, now we got lunch. That's all I'm saying. Oops all soups. That's not lunch. That's not a meal. Get out of here with that. I appreciate this soup snack. That was how thoughtful. Now we still have the matter at hand, which is the meal. I mean, the thing about an Oops All Soups too is that like anytime you see one, it's like, man, they're always closing up shop. I can't imagine why. Like it's always like, get it while you can. Last soups ever. And somebody just shaking their head like, I knew it. I told you. Oops All Soup stickers. That'll be a tough one to explain to people. Like, is this a part of your world? Is this a homebrew thing? Oh, you guys. So, Connor, you're proving my point. The best thing about soup is the part of what you get that's not the soup. And I think you're making a very salient point here. And if we got to the heart of it, with all these supposed soup fans, I think we'd find dark truths like this one you just shared. They don't want to admit it. They're gonna hide from it. But that's deep down they know. Deep down they know what it's about. The soup would still be good without the bread, but the bread wouldn't be good without the soup. Now, here's the thing. At no point did I say the soup was like antimatter. I didn't say soup ruins anything. I just said soup is never good enough on its own. Now, obviously, if we pair soup with certain things, it's like, okay, it's a little bit better with this, it's a little bit better with this. Some of those things, sure, they're not going to work on their own. Soup does help. But soup on its own? No. Never. Oh, Noel's got a real question. I feel like lawful evil is more evil than chaotic evil because they know they're evil. Does that track? It's like a superpowered baby isn't evil because it doesn't get what it's doing. I guess like it might be a cheat, but I would think like lawful evil is still like there's a set of rules, right? Like maybe it's like a devil, right? Like it still has like it's operating on principles of some sort from somewhere. Whereas chaotic, anything goes. Sebastian, how would you feel if I said you're never good enough on your own? I feel fine. Am I supposed to care about Soup's feelings now? Just how much work is this not lunch item asking of us, really? Ugh, yeah, alignment's a pretty boring thing to talk about. I mean, we can. Most of the time, though, yeah, like the best you can do is like examples, I guess. Talking about alignment is like having soup for lunch. It's not enough. It's not enough on its own. It can be fine, I guess, but unless it's paired with other stuff, it's gonna be it's gonna be a snooze fest. No, they actually they parallel each other pretty well. Turns out we've been talking about alignment charts this whole time. It was all a metaphor. Well, soup is an object, so I mean, good thing it can't feel shame, which it undoubtedly would. So at least that's it's got that going for it. It's just mediocre food. That's all. Is that an odd thing to say? Is that a new sentence? It's your fault, Sebastian. Over under on stew. Stew is again. I mean, if we're rating amongst soups, create a short for Oops All Soups. That would. I've been talking about having an alt channel for stream stuff, so it'll be over there. Look here, I tagged the moment, so I'll find this again.